I've been in the resource business now about 38 years, and I was formerly with European Goldfields as CEO, and then before that ran Gold Resources. What you see on the first photo there is actually our open pit mine. We've just started producing. We really started production, I suppose, when the whole plant was finished properly, probably in July, August. We've had our challenges. Our project is in Liberia, and we had to overcome the Ebola virus, which we've managed to do. We didn't have anyone get sick or anyone get ill, and we did quarantine the site, so it was a challenging time for us. Just nobody can read that, but my lawyers tell me I'm supposed to put all that down, so I've done that. So we're listed on AIM and the TSX under symbol AUE. We are indeed an explorer, developer and producer. We're Liberia's first commercial gold mine. We do have grade, and that's our real positive, 3.4 grams per tonne. A bit of a high strip, it's probably worth about a gram. All-in sustaining cash costs over the life of the project of $800 an ounce. Gold sales have indeed commenced. I think we've sold about 14,000, 15,000 ounces. And we would expect to ramp up properly after some of the teething problems we've had and be in commercial production in next year, January, hopefully. We do have exciting upside, and we've already outlined over 1 million ounces elsewhere in our mining license. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, because we have some exciting upside very close to New Liberty, which could obviously support that New Liberty's production. Then we have some which would be a standalone project. And last but not least, I think we've put together a strong team of people which you need to overcome the challenges in Africa and move forward as a producer. Unfortunately for us, the macro climate for resources at the moment has gone one way while we've been going the other way, and so we've gone from forming the company to becoming a producer at a time when gold has probably gone from $1,500 or $1,600 an ounce down to less than $1,100 an ounce at the moment. So nevertheless, we can still make money at these prices, and the view I would give you is that if you can build a project in a down cycle, then you can reap the rewards of the next up cycle. And somebody's probably going to ask me when that is, and I'll say, well, I don't know. But I would say that normal cycles, negative equity cycles, normally run about 4.5 years. I think we're already into the 4th year of the negative cycle. So I have a view that we may have bottomed out or close to bottomed out at the moment. Our market cap is around about £56 million. We have about 366 million shares in issue. Most of the warrants and options are well out of the money, so I don't think they'll be particularly dilutive. Our cash position is low, and we are talking to our banks with a view to maybe getting a little bit more money from them. Right, so this is our gold plant. The picture on the front page was the pit you see up here. There's a haul road comes down through here. These are our run-of-mine stockpiles. Everything goes through the primary crusher here, down through the secondary crusher, which we had problems with, which is now fixed. And I'm pleased to say we're up and running and everything's working quite smoothly. And then you conveyor it up to this cone here, which is the crushed rock cone that comes down through the milling system here and the gravity system, down through what we call the carbon in leach circuit, a detox system behind that, and gold room here. We make our own electricity with diesel generators here, and the rest of this is warehouses. So that's actually what the mine looks like. There's some more views. All these things were taken with drones. We have our own drone on site, which we use, and it's very powerful these days because it actually allows you to measure volumes of rock that you mine as well. So drone technology's come a long way. This is our mining camp, and this is the village that we had to relocate, which we successfully did. One of the advantages of the project, I guess, is that Monrovia has a free port. It's always been in operation, even when Liberia was in civil war some years ago, or some 20 years ago, or whatever it was. This is a tar road here that goes all the way to Sierra Leone, and we're only 20 kilometres off that tar road. So, you know, one of the real pluses we had was that despite the Ebola crisis, we were able to continually get our equipment and supplies to build the mine through to the site, even with all the sort of roadblocks and quarantines that took place. This big portfolio of licenses here, they all belong to us. And the red one is the mining license, which is valid for 15 years and renewable for another 25. So anything inside that red area, we have the right to mine. The picture on the right is actually our ball mill when it was transported to site, which only took about 18 hours. So we spent a total of 172 million, including some pre-strip. We've got 8 or 7 year life. We expect to produce about 120,000 ounces a year. It's a relatively small plant. It's a pretty straightforward process with recovery. Life of mine production is just under 860,000 ounces of gold, and our all-in sustaining life of mine costs are just under $800 an ounce, and our reserves are 924,000 ounces. So the difference there is the recovery, obviously, from what you produce. Yes, one of the things that is very important when you try and control your mining is that you do enough drilling to understand your grade. Obviously, we did a lot of reserve drilling, but then we came back and we did a lot more detailed drilling. And the good thing about the detailed drilling is it added about 10,000 more ounces to year one, and it confirmed the grades that we previously had. So that's exactly what you do want. You want to find a bit more and confirm that what you thought was there was actually there. And actually, I'll take that further in our production phase. What we call the plant feed grade is confirming the grades that we saw in the resource model and that we're mining from the pit. So this is a good asset in terms of grade and quality. This is another drone image. It shows you our western pit where we're mining. We're now mining in the central pit where we've got 3 zones, so that should pick up production a bit. This big ridge here is our water berm. We actually have roughly 3.5 meters of rainfall a year, so the key thing is you can't stop the heavens coming down, but you can divert any runoff, and we were successfully able to do that. That's what the mining looks like in detail. Our geologists have done a very good job in always knowing where the ore is. This is good fragmentation. So as you can see, we're starting to get up and running and becoming a mining company. We've mined about 400,000 tonnes at the moment, and we've shifted quite a lot of waste rock. We've still got some significant run-of-mine stockpiles. Our gold recoveries, one of the challenges we've had, I guess, is that we started production, we then had problems with the mill, we fixed those, we then had problems with the secondary crusher, we fixed that, and now we're starting to get into, we've had sort of about 19 days of reasonably solid production, and we're starting to move towards that commercial production level. But we did lose time with some teething problems. So if I look at the operations, one of the challenges we have had historically, especially with the Ebola crisis and with suppliers going out of business, was the lack of explosives. I'm pleased to say that we've gone back to the government, we've organised new suppliers, and we are busy shipping. First shipments are arriving, and so we've overcome this problem, I believe. However, this hasn't impacted on the supply of ore or gold-bearing rock, but it has impacted on the waste stripping. And if you have a steep ore body, you've got to keep pushing back so that you don't mine yourself into a corner. And so one of our challenges going forward is to catch that up. In order to catch that up, our fleet provider is providing additional equipment, so we're going to accelerate mining rates next year with more equipment in order to push back more and maintain our life of mine production profile. So where are we with the plant? We had some milling issues, we fixed those. We had some crushing issues, we fixed those. The plant is currently operating at design throughput capacity. And we've kept the build team on site from DRA just in case we have any other teething problems and in order to optimise the circuit. Okay, production probably will only be about 25,000 ounces or something like that this year. That's what it's looking like. But then solidly above 120,000 ounces from then onwards at really good grade. The eastern pit does drop off in grade, but by that stage I'll show you all the satellite potential we have. How much free cash would we generate? Depends on the gold price. At 1,300 gold, it could be as much as $300 million. At 1,100 gold, it's about half that. So that would be cash available for distribution to shareholders. Right, the second portion of this talk, after I've talked really about the business end and where this company's going and its graduation to proper production and becoming a new producer on the stock exchange, is to talk about our upside and the acquisitions that we've made, if you like, to develop and grow the business. That's just somebody's geological hammer, but if we look at this diagram here, this shows you our mining license and all our other licenses. As you can see, we have an extremely large portfolio of ground and lots of gold targets, all these red blobs here, or dots and stars and everything else. And I won't get too geological on you, but that's New Liberty down there. But there's this great big zone, gold-bearing zone, and everything is linked to this zone, really, and that zone can be followed all the way up through Liberia into Guinea and into Mali. So in sort of exploration terms, what you look for is those big gold-bearing structures that go on for hundreds of kilometres, and that's where you find gold deposits. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we're in the right place to find a lot more. The other exciting thing, if you like, is that we have now, with all the acquisitions we've made, we have 3 plus 10-kilometre gold belts. We've got one here, one over here, and one here. And each of those gold belts has a lot of gold at surface, and we put some drill holes into each of them. Some places we've defined resources, and in each case we seem to have a lot of continuity. And so the exciting thing for this company is you shouldn't just judge it on the producer and its early days and and its graduation, you should see that ultimately we're a growth vehicle with a lot of potential to get a lot bigger. The other thing I would note here is there's this massive river here called the Lofa River. We recently did studies along the Lofa River where we found an area of cascades that could produce with run-of-river turbines plus 20 megawatts of power. Now, we wouldn't build that system. It's not a dam system, it's a run-of-river turbine system, but DRA, the people who build the gold plant, they're engaged with development institutions, and we've engaged the government to look at building that, and they're very keen to be involved in that. But what is all that benefit to us? Well, we would be the off-taker for example, this project or that project or that project. And the cost of electricity for something like that, even as an off-take, is normally in the 10 to 15 cents per kilowatt range. We're currently producing electricity with generators down here in about the 25 cents range. So to have cheap power potential on the property is very important for future growth. So let's just look at some of these areas in detail. Within roughly 15 kilometres or 10 kilometres of New Liberty, you've got this massive gold belt here with exciting drill results, and you've got this massive gold belt here with exciting drill results. So I think New Liberty's 7 or 8 year life is only the beginning. I think it can get a lot bigger. And then right up in the north there, we've got this 13 kilometre gold belt. Now, we've done some drilling here and got 900,000 ounces or 800,000 at 2 grams, and with excellent metallurgy and very shallow dips. But we've done enough work all the way along here now with our geologists to be able to trace this gold system at surface for the whole 13 kilometres. And this is very close to that Lofa River. And so I think with a bit more drilling here, this will become a multi-million ounce deposit. We don't forget the people where we work. We respect those communities. We've got a number of cooperatives to try and develop the workforce. We employ directly, I suppose, if you count all the cleaners and all the other people involved, there must be about 1,000 people in some form or another of employment. Indirectly, I would say that supports another 10 or 12,000 people. We have an agricultural cooperative, we have a woodworking cooperative, we have a tailoring cooperative. We do a lot of training. We do simulation training. We have a simulation centre where we train local people to drive trucks. We obviously don't let them loose without having a lot of our more experienced people helping them. But part of our commitment to the country and to developing sustainable operations is obviously to have all local people involved. So we've still got a lot to do, but we have a culture of delivery. We've done a lot of things over the last few years. I think you can see that we are now going to be a producing company. We're still in our early stages. We have had our teething problems. We are confident that we're over those or getting over those and moving forward. And so I think the investment summary still remains the same in that New Liberty is indeed Liberia's first commercial gold mine. The royalty is only 3% and the corporate tax is 25%. We are allowed to credit ourselves with all the sunk costs, so that gives us a bit of a tax-free holiday. Gold sales have commenced. We believe we can achieve next year the 120,000 ounce ramp or production rate. We believe now that we're going to start moving into generating cash flow, We put a strong team of people together with lots of African experience, and I spent a little bit of time explaining our acquisitions and where we think this company could go in the medium term. So I think I've just about done it on time. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, David, thank you very much indeed. Do you have any questions for you? Put your hand up and wait for Chris to come over the microphone.
Thanks. Can you elaborate a little bit on talks with the banks about, I assume that's, are you restructuring your bank facilities or pushing back
We're
repayments?
asking them to help us a little bit in the short term, yeah.
Because you mentioned an emphasis on cash flow generation.
Yeah, well,
You've got export credit facilities, you've got facilities from the South African mining banks, haven't you? Do you have anything from the IFC? They're a shareholder, aren't they?
They're a shareholder. They like to sit at top co. I don't think that we'd engage our existing syndicate rather than
But
new.
do you have imminent debt repayment?
Yeah, we have $100 million of debt to repay at an overall interest rate of 5% all in.
Has that got an amortization schedule on it?
Yep, yeah, it has. I think we've got to pay back 12 next year of the capital. Yeah, and it's over a 5-year period, ending in end of 2020.
So you've got 6 million of cash, just under 6 million of cash,
Yeah.
and you've got to repay 12 next year. Is that back-ended next year? Or?
Yeah, but we are producing gold now, so that 6 million doesn't really reflect much in the way of gold sales.
So you would be quite capable of meeting the initial debt repayments in 2016?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always careful on answering that because I don't know where gold's going, but
Sure.
Yeah, where it is now, yes.
Thank you.
Did that answer your questions? Yep. Yep. Gentleman at the back, please.
Thank you. In your 15-mile radius map, there was a huge deposit up at Cape Mount. And do you have a license for that or an interest in that deposit?
Yeah, we recently did a joint venture. We recently acquired for less than 3 million shares those assets from a Canadian-Australian group called Sarama, and so we now own that shell company and those licenses. The other good thing in Liberia is that you're allowed to convert an additional 20% of contiguous surrounding areas into your mining license. So we hold a mining license of 372 square kilometres, so we could, in theory, convert another 74 square kilometres into that license. And so, obviously one of our intentions is to try and incorporate that whole gold belt into the mining license, because the other gold belts I showed you are already in the mining license.
How much would you like to invest in exploration in the coming year?
Well, I think things are a little tight in the short term until we get up and running, but ideally we'd like to invest $5 to $8 million. We've got all the drill targets, it's just about drilling. The other thing is just to reassure you that we won't ignore it, there's quite a long queue of bigger companies who explore the West African region who would love to come and joint venture with us if we wanted to. So one way or another, we'll fund the exploration.
You're naturally relatively modest, and I think the achievements that you've clearly demonstrated in the period of the last few years are really very commendable. In terms of where next, do you want to exploit further the area around New Liberty and try and use that as a centre, a base? Or do you look up to, I know that, and my pronunciation might be a little bit off,
Ndablama.
Ndablama. Can you do both at the same time, I guess? Can you develop the area in the north and build a new operation up there and expand the opportunity in New Liberty or around New Liberty, or do you have to prioritise one over the other at this stage?
That's a good question, yeah. I think in the short term we prioritise the areas much closer to us because they could add to the production of New Liberty. I think the Ndablama Gold Belt, that development of that project sort of depends a bit on all these studies that are going on that run-of-river turbine issue because the grade's lower. So
you'd need lower cost for that to be economic?
I think you need economies of scale on power, and so we'd probably defer that a little bit while those studies are taking place and focus our activity on the area surrounding New Liberty. Yeah.
And now you are a producer. Does life get better? Is it easier now?
No, different challenges.
Yeah.
I think that gold price is not what it was. I think the important thing is now to make sure that we can produce gold cost effectively. And one of the challenges that you always have as a producer is until you've reached that steady state level, because we've had a few downtimes on one issue or another, you've got to get yourself to that steady state. Now you need 60 days. We're 19 days in at plus 80% capacity. We need 60 days at plus 60% capacity. So we're working towards it now.
Any other questions? Gentleman here.
You mentioned you're achieving recoveries of 84 to 92%. What's the assumption in your 120,000 per ounce target?
It's 93%, yeah. It's that same issue again. Can't really get a full handle on your recovery until you've done the full 60 days. Because we've had a number of stop-start issues up until recently. And it's only in the last 19 days that we're starting to get a handle on things and have to push that out for 60 days. We will eventually achieve it, but I'm just being honest, you can't really define it or nail it down properly until you've reached that steady state.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have time for one more. I said one final one, and that was Ben talking about that first 60 days. I mean, the initial teething problems you've had, do you think they're exceptional, or the sort of thing that one might expect trying to build a new gold mine or a new processing plant in a country that had Ebola in Africa? Sure, that's just standard problems, or do you think you've had a bit more happening than that?
I think the mill was. I think the secondary crusher was a disappointment, even though the cost of the repairs weren't that great. We felt that what happened to it shouldn't have happened.
Right.
And that's why we asked DRA to come back as a whole team, not everyone, but they're experts, and make sure everything was optimised.
Was there something in the build or in the defective
Can't say that at this stage.
Right. Yeah.
What I would say is that I suppose our biggest challenge has been the lack of explosives. And we were designated as supplier by the government. The government, in the history of Liberia in the late 90s was civil war. They were a bit paranoid with the UN about issuing too many explosive licenses. And without boring you, what sort of transpired was we ended up with one supplier. They weren't doing particularly well. They fell over. We had to hunt around for other suppliers. We had to get a freight forwarder involved. People don't like transporting emulsion by ship. We've had to book our own ships, things like that. We didn't buy them, but we had to exclusively book. It's taken us a while to get that right. In a normal environment, that probably wouldn't have happened. If Ebola hadn't have happened, that wouldn't have been such a challenge. But we've overcome it. I mean, we have good people, and I think going forwards now we'll be fine. And the government have been good. Take good ground, and the early mover challenge. You're the first.
Yeah. And are you going to stay around for a drink afterwards? Going to be here?
Unfortunately, I've got to rush off to another meeting, but
Okay, well, in that case,
seriously, I'm a bit busy.
thank you very much indeed. Thank you. That's really good.